lights, those two red lights you can see, that is the start of the countdown procedure as they move into the final part of the overall start procedure. That's an acknowledgement to the team. So if you're wondering why those lights are gradually scaling down, of course they're the same lights that would be used later on for the start itself. But of course the big thing then, if those two Schumacher brothers that you can see in your screen now are going to have a big ding-dong battle this afternoon. If Ralph is heavier on fuel, Michael will know he has to get in front before or during turn 3 down at the hairpin, because if Ralph is on a one-stopper, he can spoil everybody's afternoon by holding them up so they lose the sort of 22-second advantage we know there to be in stopping twice during this race. So Ralph then on very used tyres there, we saw, and Häkkinen then has lost the engine. Häkkinen will start this Grand Prix from the back of the grid.
Mika Häkkinen once again on the parade lap has stalled his car. Of course, remember back in Brazil, he stalled it actually at the start, so it's not been a good season for getting away off the grid for Mika Häkkinen. I don't know what's going on there. Mechanics furiously working on the car, and Mika Häkkinen, before this race has even begun, has put himself right out of contention. Now, will they be able to get that car off the grid in time, Martin?
I think they should get it easily started up in time, James. Yeah, it's quite a slow lap, this early lap, so he'll easily catch the back of the pack. He's got to be round there before the light procedure commences. Otherwise, under the regulations, you must go in the pit lane. How on earth do you know that before you turn the final corner when you've already missed the pit entry? Anyway, I've never really been quite sure. But wife area there looking suitably horrified, and that McLaren will not start for whatever reason. And now they're going to push it off the grid. They can recover to the pit lane where the team can try once again to start that car, and he can start the race from the pit lane.
What a miserable season for Mika Häkkinen so far. Scored just 9 points in the first 9 races of this Grand Prix season. Astonishing to think that the two-time world champion who won the 98 and 99 world championships has been in so much trouble, and once again his bad luck continues.
Bad luck for Coulthard in many ways as well. He needs Häkkinen up there to help him take points away from Michael Schumacher in the championship fight. So Coulthard up there by himself, but as we've said, 4 different cars in the top 5 on this grid, different strategies, different tyres. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, bad news for Coulthard, but good news for Juan Montoya and Jarno Trulli, of course, because they've been promoted a place, particularly Montoya, who is well worth keeping an eye out for this afternoon. As you can see the field streaming around there, Kimi Räikkönen. There you can see the 2 Benettons. We understand that the Jaguar of Pedro de la Rosa has had some problems on the parade lap as well. We might see him pulling over in a second as they come up to form on the grid. And of course we'll see the 5 lights turn to red and then go out again.
Well, we saw Ralf Schumacher in the press conference after qualifying yesterday, and there is de la Rosa's stranded Jaguar Cosworth. We saw Ralf Schumacher saying to Michael Schumacher, hey, I owe you one from the chop you gave me last weekend, and don't be surprised if you get it back again. The pair of them completely ignoring the regulations in that you're not allowed to start chopping each other and pushing each other into the wall in front of a pack of 20 Grand Prix cars.
Remember how Michael Schumacher cut into David Coulthard last year? Will Ralf Schumacher do the same thing? A great start from him. He's got fantastic traction off the grid, and it looks like the McLaren is side by side with Schumacher as they go into Grand Court for the first time, but Schumacher gets in front. Ralf Schumacher leads from Michael Schumacher. David Coulthard third. Juan Montoya up into 4th place with Trulli 5th. A sensational start by both of the 2 Williamses, and not quite what Michael Schumacher had in mind. He really wanted to be in the lead going into this hairpin on the first lap.
Dream start then for Ralf Schumacher, no doubt about it. Coulthard and Michael Schumacher, and Ralph's locked a wheel, but he'd get away with it, I think. But Ralph braking slightly too late for that hairpin, but no damage done this time. Coulthard then side by side with Michael Schumacher into the first corner, but it turns into a piece of track that's like threading a needle. There is no room, and Coulthard had to yield, so he stays then in 3rd place. Ralf Schumacher leads Michael Schumacher.
And not making a break at the moment. Michael Schumacher staying right with his younger brother as we go through halfway through the lap now. David Coulthard looking strong. Those are the 2 marshals looking out of the way to get De La Rosa's stricken car.
I'm somewhat amazed, James, to see so many marshals on what is a runoff zone, effectively, into that 180-mile-an-hour arrival zone, into that Imola chicane. Clearly, and I didn't see any waved yellows either.
I think what they were doing, Martin, we just saw De La Rosa's car going through in front of the leaders at the moment. As you look at Mika Häkkinen, it looks like he's out of this race. De La Rosa must have got push started. That's what the marshals are doing, running out of the way. But at the end of lap 1, Ralf Schumacher leading from Michael Schumacher in 2nd place. Coulthard is 3rd, Montoya 4th, Barrichello 5th. Trulli is 6th, Heinz-Harald Frentzen is 7th, Villeneuve 8th, Kimi Räikkönen up to 9th, his teammate Nick Heidfeld is 10th, Eddie Irvine in 11th, and Jenson Button fans, your man is 17th.
Look at Coulthard wandering around there. Coulthard picking up a nice slipstream from both the Schumachers there. But remember, in the early stages of Grand Prix and after pace car situations, we've seen Ralph struggle to really build up to speed as quick as Michael. But at the moment, he's managing to keep that gap. As soon as we can pick up a flying lap time, of course, it was from a standing start last time around. Now, if we can pick up a flying lap time, we'll see if Ralph is in the 1:16s, and that's Ron Dennis, who's obviously been down to try to understand why one of his cars could not start the race.
Ron Dennis yesterday, holding a press conference, was bombarded with questions from the journalists about what is going on with Mika Häkkinen this season. Is he having a dip of form? Is Ron Dennis going to stick with him for next season? What is going on? Everybody's waiting to see whether Häkkinen is going to sign up for a 10th year with the McLaren team, which of course would make it an all-time record, one driver with one team, but certainly getting nothing whatsoever out of the French Grand Prix this year as Ralf Schumacher goes through to begin the 3rd lap, and the man on the move at the moment is Rubens Barrichello, pressing hard in 5th place.
Yes, Barrichello started this Grand Prix in 8th, so he leapfrogged both Jordans in the first 1 or 2 corners of the lap. We've yet to see a replay, unfortunately, of the start. I hope we're going to cut away to that if the French director will allow us to. But Barrichello then with a decent start. And right now, James, I can't see anything. And Ralph once again running too deep into Adelaide hairpin. But I can't see anything. Here we go. Here's yes, we can see that Frentzen was very slow away anyway with the 2 yellow cars. There is Coulthard and Michael Schumacher. Coulthard running out of space, had to get out of the throttle, and I'm assuming then Barrichello in the 2nd Ferrari, you can see him currently in 6th place, must nail that Jordan on the way down to the hairpin. But just to finish what I was saying, James, there's nothing out there at the moment. Look, Ralf Schumacher fastest lap last time around. Nothing I can see at the moment suggests Ralf Schumacher's on a heavy fuel load.
No, nothing at all. But there's Ron Dennis speaking with Mika Häkkinen just calmly and collectedly. And of course, we saw after the introduction of electronic driver aids, traction control, launch control, those kind of things, we saw that McLaren had all kinds of problems with the new software. They seem to have ironed it out over the last couple of races, but here again, some sort of gremlin has struck. Is it Häkkinen? Is it something in the electronics? Certainly the last time Häkkinen did that, it was definitely his fault. The team put it down to him, but here today we wait to find out. But Ralf Schumacher now starting to put a little bit of fresh air between himself and his brother. 7/10 of a second now he's opened out the gap over Michael Schumacher, with David Coulthard keeping right behind the 2 of them. And I fancy Coulthard this afternoon, Martin, to keep very close to Michael Schumacher. Keep watching him. It's
certainly, and just to demonstrate how close it is, the first 4 cars were all within a 10th of a second on that last flying lap. But a man I want to watch is Montoya. He's on the harder tyre, he's got a clean start, he's up there in 4th place, just 2.8 seconds behind his teammate who's leading the Grand Prix, and Montoya then is looking very strong at this stage. Kevin Piper is in the pit lane.
Yes, and we've had scenes of absolute chaos and confusion here in the McLaren garage for about 90 seconds, 2 minutes. The McLaren mechanics were like bees around the honeypots around the spare car, rapidly changing it from the settings that were there for David Coulthard in the hope that Mika Häkkinen might be able to start the race in the spare car. They were peeling off the number 4, putting on the number 3, and then Steve Hallam, one of the top guys at McLaren, walked in and said, no guys, no hope, Mika is out, he doesn't start. So not for the first time this year. It's been much head shaking and disappointment in this McLaren garage.
Well, the green flag lap counts as 1 lap of this Grand Prix, so the only way he would be able to start in the spare cars if there was an accident and they red flagged it before the end of the 2nd lap and it was a whole new restart of the Grand Prix. I do not believe he would have been allowed to start the race in the spare car without such a situation.
You're looking at the battle there for 7th, 8th and 9th places. Jacques Villeneuve, Kimi Räikkönen and Nick Heidfeld. That's the battle for the middle class honours, if you like. The middle race between Jordan, BAR and Sauber, and certainly Jordan having very much the upper hand this weekend. BAR and Sauber have been locked on more or less the same pace, with also the Jaguar of Eddie Irvine mixing it up with them. Irvine at the moment is in 12th place behind this group, but you've got Villeneuve, Räikkönen, Heidfeld, Panis and Irvine. A gigantic BAR Jaguar Sauber sandwich right in the midfield, and that's just as exciting as what's going on at the front as well. Very close racing here in the midfield. Only 2 or perhaps 3 points at stake sometimes, maybe 1, maybe none, as we saw in the Nürburgring 2 weeks ago, where Jacques Villeneuve drove his heart out to finish in 7th place. But they try very, very hard on a Sunday afternoon. This looks like it's shaping up to be a great battle.
And look at the pace of this race, James. The 16.9 that's currently the fastest lap is already a new lap record around this place. It's a 1:17.0 held before. So then already we're seeing, despite them having, say, 55 or 60 kilos of fuel on board, remember 10 kilos of fuel is over 0.3 of a second per lap. And then that must be a technical problem there for Villeneuve, I think, because it was initially, it looked like a small mistake, but then the car has faded away. So that releases Raikkonen and Heidfeld up into that 8th, and we think Villeneuve has actually gone off into the gravel. So, in fact, driven off, apparently. So Villeneuve then, some kind of technical drama in turn 2, the Estoril corner.
The race only 5 laps old, and we've already got 2 retirements. Mika Hakkinen, who never even made the start, and now Jacques Villeneuve as well. Ralf Schumacher, though, continuing his progress at the front. That's Sam Michael, you see, with your back to you, the chief operating engineer, as Jacques Villeneuve walks away. Sam Michael played a big part in the resurgence of this BMW Williams Michelin package. He's the man at the racetrack who makes decisions on the technical side. He decides the strategy, a bit like Ross Brawn, if you like. So when you think of Ross Brawn doing it for Ferrari, think of Sam Michael doing it for the Williams team. And he's come up with some pretty crafty ones so far, if we think back to the Canadian Grand Prix in particular, where Williams outsmarted Ferrari. But Ralph now starting to put a little bit of air between himself and his brother.
Exactly 1 second, according to our computer. Again, I don't see a lot of waved yellows. I see the green there to say they're clear of the danger zone as they move that stricken BAR. So Ralph then a second ahead. It was Coulthard who was fastest last time around. It's nip and tuck at the front, and Ralph once again taking that wide line through Adelaide hairpin.
And of course, we're wondering what strategies all these guys are on. They're running laps in the mid 1:17 range, which suggests they're certainly hustling on, and that suggests to me they're going to be stopping twice. Certainly they're on roughly the same pace and the same kind of strategy, that's for sure, because no one is making a break, no one is holding anybody up. Ralf Schumacher, though, as we look at the wave yellows for that incident of Villeneuve, leading the race on lap 6 from Michael Schumacher. David Coulthard still 3rd. Juan Montoya going strongly in 4th place ahead of the 5th place Ferrari of Rubens Barrichello, and then Jarno Trulli going well also in the Jordan in 6th place. Working on lap 9 here of the French Grand Prix, and the man who turned 26 yesterday, Ralf Schumacher, leading this race. You're looking down there a second ago at the BAR garage. Jacques Villeneuve has retired from this motor race, as we saw a few laps ago. He is the first retirement of the race proper. Mika Hakkinen, of course, retiring before the race even started. Michael Schumacher dropping back more and more each lap now. On that particular lap, he was 0.4 of a second slower than his younger brother. He's now 1.4 seconds behind, with David Coulthard keeping in touch, Montoya also keeping in touch. They're all watching each other, playing a game of cat and mouse. And that beautiful shot there, aerial shot from the helicopter of the BMW Williams, and the BMW pushing that car along the straights like nobody's business. All weekend we've seen them 8 or 9 kilometers an hour faster down the straights than the Ferraris and the McLaren Mercedes. And looking now at Heinz-Harald Frentzen battling with Kimi Räikkönen, the resurgent young 21-year-old Finnish driver who is currently in 8th place.
And the Brits then, a third for Coulthard, Irvine in 11th, still chasing Panis very hard. Jenson Button 15th ahead of teammate Fisichella, who's 16th. So a moderate afternoon so far. Coulthard desperately needing to stay in touch with Michael Schumacher, his championship contender, in front of him. But a double-edged sword for McLaren today, with Häkkinen not starting this race, is of course Williams are just 16 points behind them in the Constructors' World Championship. And Ralph himself is a mere 19 points behind David Coulthard, who's second in the World Championship. So with a lot of points to play for this year, and the kind of performance we've seen from Ralph and his Williams of recent times, Ralph's suddenly bringing himself right into contention.
Yes, he's been dismissing his own championship hopes, but I'm with you, Martin. I think if he wins a few more races, and particularly if Michael Schumacher has any run of bad luck, then it could certainly, the pendulum could swing Ralf Schumacher's way. As we continue to watch this battle, you can see on your screens between 7th and 8th place, Heinz-Harald Frentzen and Kimi Räikkönen. Frentzen not having a fantastic weekend here, once again out-qualified by his teammate Jarno Trulli, just 0.6 of a second between the two of them, and managing to hold off Räikkönen, who we just run out of superlatives to speak about Räikkönen, haven't we, Martin? He just keeps moving, qualifying well, keeps moving forward in the races.
Yes, and here he is once again in front of Heidfeld, his much more experienced teammate, and especially here of all places, James. Heidfeld, being a Prost driver last year, would have tested here just about every other week, but been no testing here or anywhere else this week. During the week of a Grand Prix, it's not possible, but they have had back-to-back Grand Prix. Of course, they were racing last weekend in Germany, and that's an unusual situation these days because it takes so long to demount the paddock and the digital TV compound. It's very unusual for them to have back-to-back races now. It takes too long to re-establish it in a different part of the world. They've done it because of the location this week, but the drivers then fighting hard for the second consecutive Sunday, but that should not be a problem to them.
Extremely well, Kimi Räikkönen. If you reflect, they actually started 13th on the grid as well, Martin, so he's made up 5 places in the first few laps. We're looking now at the race leader, Ralf Schumacher, currently enjoying a 1.4 second lead over his brother Michael, with David Coulthard in 3rd place. And we should turn our attention now, I think, to the strategy side of things. We mentioned at the outset you could go 1, 2 or 3 stops. Doesn't look to me as though any of these guys are stopping just once. Do you think they're all on a 2? Nobody seems to be making any breaks, do they?
No, I think they're going to be pitting roughly the same time, I would guess. Lap 25, lap 26, something like that. Maybe a lap earlier for some of them. From what I understand, talking to the various teams, they all agree on this. There's no point running shorter or longer. There's an optimum time to make your pit stop with your tyre degradation, which is a fraction of a second per lap, and that's when you should come in the pits if you want to maximise your on-track time.
So any one of the top 4 at the moment could certainly win this race. We've lost Mika Häkkinen, who was another potential race winner, but a 2-stop strategy would see the drivers coming in for their first stop around about lap 24 to 26, and then their second stop around about lap 45. That's what we're expecting to see this afternoon. We can have lead changes on the track, we can have lead changes in the pits. An awful long way to go at the moment in this 71-lap French Grand Prix.
I think there'll be a few mechanics just beginning to stretch their muscles and crack their knuckles down in that pit lane, because it's just that kind of afternoon where the mechanics make the difference for the result of the Grand Prix, James.
Yes, I've seen it many times, been down in the garages myself. But Louise Goodman has news for us from Mika Häkkinen.
Yes, I have Mika with me now. Mika, I know you're not able to tell us exactly what happened, but just tell us the thoughts that went through your mind when you stopped on the grid there.
Well, I think simply it's just what's going on in my mind that time. You know, it's like feeling like you cannot believe it. You can't believe how bad luck I had, that kind of situation. You know, when engine started, I thought everything is fine, and they suddenly stopped. And I just sat there, and the team mechanics tried to do everything to make the car to start again. So I was super disappointed, but I walked away again and said, well, Just have to look the future and try to still to look very positive, you know.
Thanks, Mika.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, isn't it? And especially after such a disappointment, the adrenaline was getting ready to boil up, and all of a sudden it just falls completely flat on you. Good of Mika to talk to Louise in that situation, but clearly doesn't want to have to explain what exactly went wrong. He can't explain why probably at this time. It'll need looking at through the data acquisition on the car. But Mika Häkkinen then out of this Grand Prix, and he remains on 9 World Championship points only.
After 10 races, it will be at the end of this one. Michael Schumacher, though, setting a new lap record, a 1:16.848, just closing the gap just a little bit to his brother Ralph, who still leads. That's Rubens Barrichello, who's still in 5th place with Juan Montoya. There he is in 4th place, just ahead of him, and also a man worth watching. But let's just talk about this brotherly love thing, Martin, between Ralf Schumacher and Michael Schumacher. Obviously, a little bit of a fallout after the Nürburgring race, where we initially thought as we left the circuit on the Sunday night it was because Ralf felt Michael had tried to push him into the wall off the start line. But now they're trying to make us believe that in fact it was just Ralf was upset the stop-and-go penalty he received, and both brothers saying nothing between us, we're as close as we've ever been. What's your spin on it?
Well, the Schumacher brothers are now a worldwide brand, aren't they? And of course everybody's going to want to try and get a Jemmy bar between the pair of them and understand what they really do tell each other when they're laying on the beach in the winter or whatever. Do they talk tyres? Do they talk team personnel? How much do they really tell each other? And how long then? How long will Michael Schumacher carry on saying, look, hey, I don't mind finishing second if my brother wins the race? And I don't believe that. It's going to be, in my experience of Formula One, impossible for these two Schumachers to end up or remain very close through what is going to... They're both now nailed to their teams. They're both now nailed to their teams for another 2 or 3 years. We're going to see a lot of head-to-head action. And Louise is with Jacques Villeneuve.
I am indeed, Martin. Jacques, any ideas what stopped you?
Electrical. I'm not sure what happened, but suddenly it switched off.
We saw you looking down into the cockpit. Were you hopeful that you could rectify the problem, or were you just trying to work out what it was?
Well, I was wondering if there was any button I could press that would do something, but no, the car just switched off.
Bad luck, thanks.
Sounds like he was looking for the ejector seat there. He sounds pretty unhappy about all of that. It's not been a great season for Jacques Villeneuve, that's for sure. And Frentzen then continues to be under pressure from 8th place man Kimi Räikkönen.
Jacques Villeneuve's not scored any points for 3 races. And that's an awful long time for the 1997 world champion, but these two going at it hammer and tongs, because of course, although they're only in 7th and 8th place at the moment, we're still only on lap 16, an awful long way to go, and they could well end up with points at the end of the day if they keep pressing on. Where did Räikkönen go?
He may well have gone in the pit lane. You can easily disappear, and Räikkönen then going for an extraordinarily early stop, so it looks like he's either decided to stop early within his 2-stopper and try to clear Frentzen. I doubt it, because he's going to go back out into the pack in a lot more traffic and get held up anyway, or he's on a 3-stopper, which is probably more likely. Meanwhile, Ralf Schumacher has done a lap record of a 1:16.6 this time around as the fuel load begins to ebb away.
Strange decision there by the Sauber team to bring Kimi Räikkönen in. Possibly he had a slow puncture, something along those lines, although he seemed to be harrying Heinz-Harald Frentzen. It's too early, really, to come in on a 3-stop strategy, and he put far too much fuel in for it to be a 3-stopper as well. We'll keep an eye on what Kimi Räikkönen is doing, but at the moment, Ralf Schumacher is pressing on. A new lap record from him, a 1:16.667. He leads after 15 laps from Michael Schumacher. 1.6 seconds the margin between the two of them. Coulthard is 3rd, Montoya 4th, Barrichello 5th, and Trulli only 15 seconds behind the leader in 6th place. Of the French Grand Prix, and this is Eddie Irvine putting enormous pressure on the BAR of Olivier Panis. This is the battle for 9th place. Could yield points at the end of the day, so everything is at stake here for both of these drivers. They're fighting tooth and nail at the moment. Irvine has been much quicker than Panis through the final stages of the lap, and chucking the car all over the place in his attempts to get past the British-American racing car. Amazingly, that's Enrique Bernoldi pulling off in the Arrows Asia Tech. He was down in 13th place, but looks like his race is run. But this is the battle, as I say, between Panis and Irvine. Panis yet never scored points, would you believe, in the French Grand Prix, his home Grand Prix in all those years, as we look at the timing stand of Jaguar. And once again, you can see that Eddie Irvine has lost ground through that first corner, so Panis able to use the Honda power, but Ralf Schumacher pulling out yet more of a margin, more speed, a 1:16.585, and he's certainly belying all the comments we made about those Michelin soft tyres. At the moment he's finding more and more speed and more grip from them, Martin.
He did. Gerhard Berger was saying to me he didn't believe there was much time difference actually between the soft and the hard that his two drivers are on, but he said, I'm really not at all sure about the durability, but they're on their 20th lap, and so far they're looking pretty durable. Another 6 or 7, and we're expecting them in for a pit stop, so no dramas at all then for Ralf Schumacher. He's just holding on to that 1.7 second lead, but the first 5 cars, Ralf Schumacher, Michael Schumacher, Coulthard, Montoya, Barrichello, and are all lapping in the late 1:16.
And still only 10 seconds between them, first to fifth, so it's very, very close. Kevin Piper, what can you tell us?
Yeah, just to underpin the point you're making about tyres there, down here in the Williams garage, we're in stark contrast to the earlier scenes at McLaren. It's all cool, calm, collected. Patrick Head and the team with their eyes firmly fixed on the various screens and monitors here, charting the progress. But the point is worth making that Juan Pablo Montoya was absolutely adamant after qualifying yesterday that he had made the right choice. The hard tyre, in his view, was his best chance of getting a good result. And a quick word about the rivals, Bridgestone, Coulthard and Schumacher, both big fans, and one tyre technician described them as having really good grip, but above everything, fantastic durability. So it all makes for an intriguing battle.
Jenson Button pitting there from 13th position and showing that they were on a relatively light fuel load at the beginning of the race, so bad news there for Jenson. That's put him down to 15th. Raikkonen, who made that very early stop, I think you're right, James, Raikkonen's stop could not have been a scheduled one in any way, shape or form, and that's put him back down in 14th place. Shame for him, but up at the front it's still equally tight.
Now, you'll have seen when Jenson Button made that pit stop that the front tyres he put onto the car looked like they'd already done a race distance, and that's because with these softer Michelin tyres, they're all having to what they call scrubbing them in, just putting a few laps on them first. Now, you're looking at the tyres there of Ralf Schumacher, the race leader. He's on the same kind of tyres as Jenson Button, and I understand that they needed to start this race on tyres which have done 13 laps at least. And that's certainly what looks like what Button had just put on his car. And no doubt Ralf Schumacher, when he comes in for his stop, sometime in the next 5 or 6 laps, he'll be putting the same on. But just like how close it still is at the front, still only 10 seconds separating first to fifth.
And they're amongst the back markers then, James, albeit the ones that have stopped. And the teams very much calculate this when they're working out their strategy for the afternoon. How long will it be into the race, given normal lap differences between the front and rear of the grid, before they catch the back markers?
Fortunately for Jenson Button, he is one of the back markers, and right below us we have the Ferrari mechanics coming out now to make a pit stop. Just looking to see, I think it might well be Michael Schumacher who's coming in, and it's Rubens Barrichello, in fact. Rubens Barrichello coming in to make his first stop from 5th place.
No apparent dramas at the moment. Revs are up, he's disappeared from underneath our commentary box, and away goes Rubens Barrichello into that new pit exit where you feed in much later. Some of the drivers have been unhappy about that, but it's certainly a better solution than feeding you in right into the heart of turn 1. But I think there is a point where the cars come very, very close together at a very high speed. Some of the drivers uncomfortable with that, but that then is Heidfeld in for his first stop of the afternoon. And Michael Schumacher there, currently still in 2nd place, 2.4 seconds now behind Ralf.
Yes, Ralph has cleared Jenson Button, though Michael Schumacher still has yet to do so. And we're entering the zone now for the first pit stops. Everybody looking very carefully at what everybody else is doing. You can see this is the battle now. Irvine got in front of Olivier Panis. This is the battle for 9th place. Here's how he did it.
So it's into the last part, and he's going to take the big banzai up the inside into Lycée. That's a cheeky move, but it pays off as long as you have a willing partner, and that's a clever move from Irvine, one he had to make. He has a much faster car, and Panis then really not fighting that one too hard, James.
Oh, he seemed very wide over, didn't he? It's almost like inviting him through.
Yeah, I think he saw it launched, and once you've elected to have a go at that move, there's a one-way street. You switch that move on, you cannot switch it back off again halfway through, and I think we all know that. We've all achieved that move at some point or other, and we've all been victims of the same move.
What do you do? Just close your eyes and hope for the best?
It's a little bit like that, and you launch into that last corner, you think, well, why didn't I go into that as fast as that every time?
Eddie Irvine's made it work for him. I wonder whether it looks like Olivier Panis might well have dived into the pits there, having got past by Eddie Irvine, but there's your race leader still after 22 laps of this 71-lap French Grand Prix, approaching the first round of pit stops. Ralf Schumacher still by 2.4 seconds from his brother Michael. Coulthard is third, just another 2 seconds down, and then it's Montoya and Trulli, so very much action stations coming up.
It makes sense that Barrichello's pitting earlier than the others. Remember, he started in 8th place on the grid. By having 10 or 15 kilos less fuel, he had a much better chance of overtaking in the early few corners, and of course, he made that pay off very nicely as Jean Alesi then in the Prost Acer makes his stop. Some very used Michelins going on. 8.4 seconds. I don't know why they keep cutting away to the pit wall when they're doing that. It'd be nice to see the cars depart.
They were absolutely exasperated in the Prost garage after qualifying yesterday. Apparently Jean Alesi could not get his head into gear at all. It was a French Grand Prix, maybe he was just overexcited, but he was over a second slower than his teammate Luciano Berti. Apparently all his discipline of all these years of racing, he's been in Formula 1 now for 12 years, all went completely out the window, and he completely underperformed yesterday. He just got too emotional. We saw in the build-up to this show just how emotional he can be.
Obviously very excited about his work for F1 ITV this week, James. I'd imagine the fact that he was going to be on the telly today, maybe that spoiled his concentration. But Barrichello then, that's a very, very fast lap by him on the fresh tyres.
And that's an indication of just how much the fresh tyres are worth, because of course Barrichello will have taken on quite a bit of fuel. That should slow him down, but no, it's speeding him up, because the tyres on the lead cars now are beginning to show their age, just as we predicted. We're on the 24th lap, and this is the Williams pit crew getting ready to receive one of their two drivers. They're both contenders in this race. Ralf Schumacher, of course, is leading. Juan Montoya is in 4th place, and it's Ralf Schumacher who comes in, the race leader, on lap 25 to make his first pit stop, bang on schedule. Tidy work so far, fuel going in. Look at how old those tyres are, Martin.
Yeah, they look well tatty, don't they? But clearly they're about to do the job, and that looked like a longish stop to me. That did not do the job.
Yes, that's at least 2 seconds longer than it should normally take for a two-stop pit stop. So the window has now been opened for Ferrari. Michael Schumacher, can he get the hammer down? He was just 2.4 seconds behind his brother when his brother made his pit stop that time round. And Ralf certainly seemed to have the fuel hose on for quite a while, but I think the delay there was the right rear tyre. It wasn't all fuel that went in there by any stretch of the imagination. So Michael Schumacher, can he do enough now to get it in the pit stops to take the lead?
And the pit stop, I believe, James, will be this lap. Once again, there's an army of Ferrari mechanics in scarlet overalls and scarlet crash helmets underneath our window. Michael Schumacher in Chateau d'Eau. A couple of corners now to the entry of the pit lane. We think he will clearly be in this time, and they're putting brand new tyres on, I can see underneath there, and he'll duck left now, and there he goes. Schumacher then, your current race leader in the pit.
Well, he sat his fastest first sector of the entire race at the beginning of this lap. His middle sector wasn't too bad. He was 2 seconds behind his brother when he came in, but after a slow stop for Williams, they lost time. What's going to happen here? A cracking stop by Ferrari. Is this going to be enough for Michael Schumacher to take the race lead? He's going so slowly, it must feel like an eternity down the pit lane. And has he done enough?
I believe he will have done enough. I would be very surprised if that's not enough for Michael Schumacher to have got out in front of Ralf. It was a turn a bit second, quicker stop. He had a quick in lap too. And where, yeah, there he is. Yes, he's done it. Ralf Schumacher then now demoted to 2nd place. We think he took on about 74 litres of fuel, so a moderately short middle stint of the race then for Michael Schumacher.
Yes, and of course we saw Ralf Schumacher being delayed in the pits, but I don't believe that was all fuel going in. I do believe it was a slight problem with the rear tyre. We'll have to have that checked out, but obviously it'll make a big difference to when they make their second stops. Michael Schumacher, we're expecting to come in around the mid-lap 40s, but here's a man who still has not made his pit stop. David Coulthard, currently in second place, just 1 second behind Michael Schumacher on the racetrack. When he rejoins, he's going to come in at around about 5th place, I think, behind Ralf Schumacher, as Jos Verstappen makes his first stop of the afternoon.
So they're all choosing the optimum strategy finally then, and here then is Coulthard. He goes a little bit further down the pit lane to find his crew. Of course, they were second in last year's World Championship, so they're positioned second in the pit lane at every circuit we go to, and they're looking like they're fueling him slightly longer for David Coulthard. I believe he will stay in effectively what is 3rd place, although of course Montoya, your 4th place man previously, has not yet stopped.
But of course Coulthard was racing with Michael Schumacher, was only a second shy of him. Is he going to rejoin? Where is Michael Schumacher? Is that Michael Schumacher behind Coulthard? I wonder if it is. I think it is.
Do you think so? I think it's more likely to be Barrichello. He's been lapping quickly. So there's Ralf going through your picture, and there's Coulthard shaping up to pass the Minardi. But I think Barrichello, remember, he pitted early, put in those very fast laps, and it's helped his race enormously.
Yeah, Coulthard must have lost a little time, though, as well, Martin, I think, because he was only a second behind Michael Schumacher when he dived in for that stop. So that's Rubens Barrichello down in 5th place. Coulthard then drops down just in front of him. Montoya has not yet stopped. How much fuel has this man got on board? That's the $10 million question. Of course, he's using the harder of the Michelin tyres. And Juan Montoya now in the box seats as far as this Grand Prix is concerned. All eyes at Michelin will be very much on him, of course. This is their first home Grand Prix since their return to Formula One after a long absence. Their first pole position this weekend with Ralf Schumacher, and is Juan Montoya going to get his first Grand Prix victory this weekend as well?
Well, I'll tell you something, James. If he's won stopping, he's won the race, because he's been able to match the early runners, and we know he's got the harder tyres on. If he did, and I'd be amazed if he did, because he should not be going that quickly, given the fuel load necessary to do that. But Montoya then marching on his way, lap 28 of this Grand Prix, and last time around he had a 9-second advantage over Michael Schumacher.
As Eddie Irvine comes into the pits, this is lap 28 now, quite a late stop for a two-stopper, but certainly Juan Montoya, after qualifying yesterday, I mentioned he was feeling very bullish, and he did say that he felt there was a possibility of taking a few risks this afternoon. He said, I feel I might do something different in the race tomorrow, certainly something very different from Ralf. It looks at the moment as though he's gone that way. He made a different choice on tyres. Has the strategy played out for Juan Montoya?
Mind you, he was a second slower than Michael Schumacher last time around, so right now then it's Michael that's making the moves on the racetrack. Michael was very, very fast, a 1:16.2, well over a second quicker than anybody else, although of course some of the key players are in traffic, as indeed Montoya then. So what will the gap be this time around? It was 8.7, it's now 8.1, so another 0.6 of a second eked out of that lead by Michael Schumacher.
So Montoya leading then after 28 laps, 8.1 seconds, as you've just seen the gap between himself and Michael Schumacher in second place. Ralf Schumacher in the second of the two Williamses is third, with David Coulthard fourth, 16 seconds behind the race leader, but just 8 seconds behind Michael Schumacher. And then we've got Rubens Barrichello, another couple of seconds behind Coulthard. Irvine coming into play, although he's just made his pit stops. I'm sure when the computer shakes out, he'll drop down a little bit. In fact, he does. Jarno Trulli now appearing in 6th place. We haven't seen him come in for this. He must have made a pit stop, actually, because he's now dropped down to a full 20 seconds behind Rubens Barrichello. So quite a lot of margins, in fact, opening up in those pit stops. You can see the variable ability of the pit crews and the timing of the in-laps and the out-laps. We had the top 5 separated by just 10 seconds before the pit stops. Now they're separated by 18 seconds.
Yes, and we have seen Ross Brawn play this shorter middle stint to great effect many times, assuming I'm right on that. But, of course, the fuel flows in at about 12 litres per second, 8 kilos per second, and that's how we know roughly how much they put in. But I agree with you. I think Ralph's stop was lengthened because of a slight delay on one of the wheels, rather than having put in that much fuel. And Kevin Piper is down at the Williams pit.
Yeah, not sure how much I can tell you other than, hold it, in fact, I think it's right to say that Montoya could be coming in this lap, or could be coming in within the next couple of laps. I was going to speculate that he could be on a one-stopper on the back of some information I've been given, but all they're saying now is that Ralf Schumacher's stop was on schedule, and it looks as if Montoya is on his way in now.
We're watching Michael Schumacher at this time, and hopefully if Montoya does pit, we will pick that up. It's down then at the Nürburgring chicane. Michael Schumacher has pulled the lead back now to 6.6 seconds behind this man, Montoya. He's got a bit of traffic ahead of him. He should not really have to clear that car before he enters the pit this time around, and we believe the pit crew are out. Yes, indeed, the Williams pit crew are ready to receive Montoya, and he has lost a bit of time. The Prost then making a bit of a fuss about letting him through, so Montoya into the pit lane. The team will be very ready for him. Out of the lead, into the pits.
So the telltale thing now is how long the fuel hose goes on for. Juan Montoya, the race leader, comes in. The fuel hose is on now. The stopwatch is running. If it's anything more than about 9 or 10 seconds, he could well be fueling it to go to the finish. It's not. He's going a two-stop strategy. So that means that Michael Schumacher leads the race. From Ralf Schumacher, David Coulthard is third. Rubens Barrichello as well is in the mix. Where's Montoya going to rejoin into the mix? As Juan Montoya took on just under 90 litres of fuel. And that'll take him deep into the early lap 50s, I would imagine, which will make him, again, the last stopper. And so a very interesting cat and mouse afternoon here tactically. And you're looking there at Michael Schumacher, the new race leader, after Juan Montoya made his stop there. And Ralf Schumacher not far behind him, 6.8 seconds behind him though, so it's played out quite nicely for Michael Schumacher. He managed to get ahead of his brother. As you look at this timing wall there, Ferrari, Jean Todt on the right, the sporting director, and Ross Brawn on the left. It's played out very nicely, this, for Michael Schumacher, hasn't it, Martin?
It has indeed, but the real race at the moment is Coulthard has closed down to Ralf Schumacher by just 1.2 seconds, and we believe there's a 10-second stop-and-go penalty for Coulthard for pit lane speeding. We think David Coulthard's about to get a stop-and-go. What a disaster that is. Michael Schumacher moves into the lead, and 10-pointer. Coulthard at least is on 4 in third at this time, and he is now going to get a stop-and-go.
The margin, of course, already between them in the World Championship is 24 points. So another solid 10 out of 10 for Michael Schumacher this afternoon. And nul point for Coulthard will pretty much put another nail in the coffin of Coulthard's championship hopes. Although we still, of course, and there's the confirmation, we still have plenty of races left in this World Championship yet. Another 7 races. And, well, a very forlorn McLaren pit crew now coming out to get the stopwatch ready to time David Coulthard's stop and go, because, of course, the team have to do it themselves, don't they, Martin?
Yes, they do. He will stop at his own garage, and they cannot touch the car. He has to be stationary for at least 10 seconds. And, well, that's the second consecutive Sunday a good race has been spoiled by necessary penalties, I'm afraid. I mean, you can't even stop and talk to the policeman and try and talk your way out of that and pretend you're on your way to your wife having a baby or something, can you? You're nicked and that's it. You've got to come in, argue about it later with the judge.
Well, one member of our team, of course, this weekend has already had a run-in with the constabulary on a speeding offence. David Coulthard is just going to be having to come in and make his 10-second stop-and-go penalty. Here he is diving into the pit lane, was in 3rd place. This is going to drop him down, I imagine, to about 6th or 7th place, possibly behind Jarno Trulli. A disaster for David Coulthard.
Trulli's about 34 seconds behind the 6th place man. This will definitely put Coulthard, though, down into 5th place. Did you see Barrichello was only 2 seconds behind him anyway? Barrichello having a tidy middle part of this Grand Prix as Coulthard rejoins. And once again, Bertie clumsily letting people past him.
Yes, Bertie down in 12th place. Not a bad run for him, but he's already been lapped. We've lapped everybody now up to 11th place. The next man to be lapped will be Olivier Panis, and the man who will be doing it will be this man here, Michael Schumacher, currently leading the World Championship and currently leading the French Grand Prix, already 4 times winner here. He's 7.7 seconds clear of his brother Ralf. Rubens Barrichello in 3rd place, Coulthard 4th, Montoya 5th, Jarno Trulli 6th, Heidfeld and Frentzen having a great battle in 7th place. Then it's Irvine in the Jaguar 9th, and Kimi Räikkönen still going strongly in 10th place in the Sauber. approaching half distance then in the French Grand Prix. You've missed nothing. Michael Schumacher still leading this race by 10 seconds now from his brother Ralph, with Rubens Barrichello in the second Ferrari, who's been the major benefactor of the first round of pit stops. He's now just 1 second behind Ralf Schumacher and pressing very hard indeed. That last lap, he was 0.8 of a second faster than the Williams driver. In fourth place, we still have the second BMW Williams of Juan Montoya, and David Coulthard did manage to re-emerge in front of Jarno Trulli. He's fifth, Trulli is sixth, and that is Rubens Barrichello on screen, currently running in third.
Yeah, Barrichello started 8th, up to 3rd, and look, just 1.1 seconds behind Ralf Schumacher. The Ferrari working beautifully. A lot of talk that those Bridgestones have been blistering under a heavy load through the weekend, but I think once again it's a similar situation where they blister on the inside shoulder of the rears, and the drivers don't really know about it until they're told, or until they come in the pits sometimes later. So the Ferrari's working absolutely beautifully this afternoon, and it's Ralf Schumacher coming under pressure, the very man we expected to be pressurising the Ferrari.
Absolutely, although I do wonder, we talked in the early stages about the tyre wear situation, and of course Ralf Schumacher is using the softer Michelins. He's not going as quickly in this middle phase of the race as he did in the first phase, but below us, Martin, Ferrari getting ready with another new set of tyres, so we wait to see whether that's seems a bit early for it to be on schedule. Rubens Barrichello made the first stop in the very early lap 20s, about 21 or 22 I think it was, and it's only 14 laps ago in fact he made his stop. Is he coming in this time by?
Well, they may have elected to do that because they think that if they get him in, get him some clear air, they will have calculated where he will rejoin the racetrack. Is there any traffic in that zone? Is that the way to springboard past Ralf Schumacher? Remember, last time they gave him fresh tyres, he went out and did a 1:16.1, a new lap record, and that could well get him up into second place. So I think smart thinking there by the Ferrari team. Very interesting tactics. Not seen anything like that for a long time. We're waiting to see where exactly Rubens Barrichello is going to rejoin, but of course they're taking advantage of this big gap there is in performance between the top 3 teams and everybody else, Martin. They're able to just use that big void, that vacuum, move the cars around and slot them in with no risk of being passed by the BARs and the Saubers of this world. Now we can see also why they've done it. Look, they've got him back out in front of Coulthard. Remember, Coulthard had to make a second stop for his stop-and-go penalty, speeding in the pit lane. I don't really understand how that can happen. There's a button on the steering wheel, and it's controlled electronically. But Ferrari working out. They can keep their man ahead of Coulthard, maybe find him some clear air. With the blue flag situation these days, that Prost will have to get out of the way quickly, and that's kept him in front of Coulthard and could well springboard him up into second place. Of course, the interesting thing is Coulthard's still got a second stop to make, and we wonder whether Rubens Barrichello has enough fuel now to go through to the finish, because he's been refueled twice in the last 16 laps. Both times he's taken on around 60 or 70 kilos. So depending on how much he had in the car at the start, Rubens Barrichello will either be able to go to the finish or maybe have a splash and dash just before the end. But exactly as you say, Martin, he's now ahead of David Coulthard. This is one for the aficionados who like their race strategy. This is going to be studied for quite a few years to come, I think, this Grand Prix, because it's all happening in the minds of Ross Brawn, Sam Michael and the other technical directors who try and work out the strategies, trying to place their car in exactly the right position, working against the way the drivers go, the tyres degrade and the fuel load lightens. It's pure maths, it's very difficult, and only very few people are any good at it. A nose change here, looks like, down in the Minardi garage, and that is Alonso from 17th place, Martin. That was a very quick nose change too. It normally takes 17-18 seconds, but ironically they had the nose on before they finished refueling. That was impressive. That's very impressive. Ron Dennis there watching on. His man, David Coulthard, of course, after that stop-and-go penalty, now down in 5th place. Just 34 laps remaining, just over half distance in this French Grand Prix, and a very interesting tactical game going on here in France. They obviously practice those nose change quite regularly, but I'm not sure how comfortable I'd be. I mean, in a big accident where you sideswipe the nose of the car, you want that to stay on, and that is only hanging on by obviously a couple of bolts. Clearly it passes the crash test, which I believe are only in the straight ahead position. So they have these gigantic Allen keys that they bring in from the side to just lock on the nose. But as you say, Martin, normally 4 main retaining bolts, 2 at the top, 2 at the bottom, holding the nose onto the main monocoque of the chassis. And in that case, they managed to get them off extremely quickly as the Minardi moves well out of the way. That's Tasso Marquez.
getting out of the way in 18th place of the race leader, the second time he's been lapped this afternoon. Michael Schumacher has lapped everybody still up to Olivier Panis in 11th place.
There's a huge race of reputations going on here this afternoon, but it's down in 13th and 14th place at the moment. Fisichella now slightly ahead of Button. Button on his back foot this year with a difficult car that is slow, and he really does, as we've said many times, need to show that he's as good as, if not better than Fisichella, and they're at it hammer and tongs, really. It's like a little private war going out there, because they're really effectively not part of this Grand Prix, James, and this was the very weekend where they were supposed to be coming out with all guns firing, of course.
Yes, we heard talk of improvements to the engine of the Renault. We heard talk of aerodynamic improvements as well. Mike Gascoigne, the Benetton team technical director, has been working feverishly to try and improve the Benetton car, and as you say, Martin, no real gains. But we're looking at Ralf Schumacher now. What is he? Well over 14 and a half seconds behind his brother Michael, and this second set of tyres not working for Ralf Schumacher.
Yeah, it's just what I was going to say, James. It's really not panning out, is it, in this stage of the race? Because look, Montoya then just over a second adrift on the harder tyres, and Ralf not showing anything like the pace he did earlier on. He's back in the 1:17s and clearly not happy with the balance of that car. And it's all about balance, this racetrack. It's a very technical track. You need the car to go where it needs to go.
And of course, the man who'll be really kicking himself about this is David Coulthard. He was just 1 second adrift of Ralf Schumacher when he had that stop-and-go issue. He would now almost certainly be monstering him, passing him, and up into, well, second place, really, and looking at trying to catch onto the back of Michael Schumacher. Meanwhile, it's Juan Montoya who is now climbing onto the back of Ralf Schumacher. They've got a back marker in front of them, and I think we're going to have some internal Williams squabbling coming fairly shortly.
And unless Barrichello does have to have a splash and dash later on, it is working out very nicely for him, quietly back there in 4th place, lapping about a second a lap faster than the Williams consistently, and that, as we said, is going to springboard him up into 2nd place. He's currently lapping same speed as the race leader and teammate Michael Schumacher, and Ralf then will easily clear that back marker under braking, and he doesn't do so, does he? Look, he's not happy. That's Bertie once again sort of making a big job of getting out of the way, but Ralf did not look confident into that hairpin.
The situation constantly changing, ever evolving throughout this Grand Prix. We've got another 31 laps to go and a lot of changes no doubt to happen. Ralf Schumacher seems pretty ginger under braking, as you say, Martin. Juan Montoya, though, right behind him. These two BMW Williams drivers, of course, using 2 different types of Michelin tyres. That strategy was decided before qualifying yesterday as we watched Kimi Räikkönen coming in to make his pit stop on lap 41. Getting a nice wipe of the visor. Fuel going in. Yeah, pretty much bang on target for a 2-stop. A bit early for his 2nd stop, but there's the man we've got our eyes on at the moment, Juan Montoya. And, well, he said yesterday after qualifying he felt he was on the better tyre, that Ralf had gone for qualifying position rather than race position. And he'd deliberately sacrificed 0.6 of a second he knew he could have had in qualifying, but he wanted a better race tyre, and there's some serious thinking going on there on the Williams pit wall. What they don't want, of course, Martin, is any fun and games between these two, either of them putting each other out. They want points. Williams are here to score as many points as they possibly can this weekend.
Yes, they're thinking, right, if we want to win this race, we want to minimise the damage of Michael Schumacher up front. They've got to get, I think, Montoya past Ralf Schumacher somehow. Ralf is clearly not hooked up for whatever reason, and their best bet, I think, is to get Montoya past him.
Of course, we'll turn our minds back to Jordan, of course, in the Belgian Grand Prix a few years ago in the rain. Damon Hill leading Ralf Schumacher. Sorry, Ralf Schumacher leading Damon Hill. And no, Damon Hill leading Ralf Schumacher and told not to overtake him, even though Damon was faster. Ralf was faster. That's the situation. Ralf Schumacher took it very badly indeed on that occasion. Wasn't at all happy. What's his reaction going to be, I wonder now, if Williams get on the radio and say, listen, Ralf, we know you qualified on pole on your birthday, but one's faster, let him through.
Well, Montoya's sort of got in that dirty air zone and not getting much further now. Meanwhile, Michael Schumacher's over 17 seconds ahead, so it's just not working out at the moment. Williams do not appear to have an answer to Michael Schumacher pace, the same pace he showed in the warm-up this morning. Häkkinen, as it happens, and Michael Schumacher looking blisteringly fast this morning, and Michael certainly confirming that this afternoon, and Barrichello backing that up well too.
30 laps to go in the French Grand Prix then. Still only 3 retirements, amazingly enough. Mika Häkkinen, whose car failed on the parade lap. He never even got as far as the start line. Jacques Villeneuve, who had some kind of electrical failure and pulled off after 12 laps, and Enrique Bernaldi, who pulled off after 23 laps.
And here we go, Irvine makes the move finally on Frentzen, and I believe Frentzen should be penalised for that. Frentzen should let him go, otherwise he will get penalised because he saved a position by taking a shortcut. You won't get penalised if you don't take advantage, but by not losing the place, you're taking advantage.
And we saw Eddie Irvine gesturing there to the pit wall. You could see he was very unhappy. He believes also that Heinz-Harald Frentzen should move out of the way. Meanwhile, Martin, as we take a look at this first.
Yeah, Irvine then getting position into the chicane. Frentzen nowhere to go. He just elected to scream across the no man's land there, and that is cheating. That is not within the regulations. I'll be amazed if he doesn't get some kind of penalty, a stop-and-go penalty for that. What would have been smart there, and yes, he has let him through, look. Just was to say, what would be smart is to let him through if he wants to avoid that penalty.
Yes, this is the battle, of course, for 8th place between Heinz-Harald Frentzen and Eddie Irvine. Here it is from earlier on.
Yeah, and Frentzen, look, lifted off the throttle, yielded, did not make a fight of that at all, and I would suspect the team told him to do that.
Yeah, smart thinking. Yes, he waves. You can see clear acknowledgement of his mistake. It's cost him a place. It's cost him 8th place, in fact. Meanwhile, the Williams pit crew are out in the pit lane. We understand it might well be for Ralf Schumacher, currently on 2nd place, and this is the 44th lap, so Ralf pretty much bang on target here for a 2-stopper. We saw him earlier on coming in on lap 25. This is going to drop him down probably to about 5th place, I would imagine, 4th or 5th place, and Juan Montoya is the one who's going to benefit from it. He's going to move up into 2nd place, and of course we're still not quite sure how much fuel Montoya's got on board.
Well, the big story then that we can look for at the moment is will Barrichello and Coulthard end up in front of those 2 Williams, and it's Montoya that goes through, and it is Ralf who comes into the pit lane, Kevin Piper.
Yes, and the other big story, is it going to be Ralf being told to defer to Montoya, or are they going to let them just go out and do their own thing? Patrick Head and Sir Frank Williams were locked in conversation just moments ago before this pit stop, as Ralf makes a quick exit, but it's going to be interesting because fairly shortly we should know who's going to come out on top in the battle here at Williams.
But I think the damage is already done, Kevin, because Michael Schumacher 20 seconds in the lead last time around, and we're expecting a Ferrari in this time too, and it must be for Michael Schumacher. We saw Barrichello pitting a few laps ago, so Michael Schumacher then in this time around, we believe.
Yes, and he's only 19.9 seconds ahead of Montoya, and that's not going to be enough for him to rejoin in front of the Colombian. So Montoya will again lead the race, I believe, after this pit stop. Michael Schumacher dives in. He needs to make this as quick as he possibly can. No pit lane speeding, of course, for him. They'll have warned him of what happened to Coulthard. No one wants to make that same mistake as David Coulthard made. New tyres going on, brand new tyres. So far, so good.
And this is where it pays off for Michael Schumacher when he does not do that extra run in qualifying. He saves new tyres from the Friday morning, for the Saturday morning, as the regulations now work out, through to, it wasn't a particularly good stop, James, was it? Montoya, I believe, will take the lead again, and he does so. Montoya then flashes through the foreground, but he's got to stop again. Michael Schumacher has not got to stop again.
Indeed he has. We thought Montoya might be trying a one-stopper, but as it turned out, he stopped very late, of course, but he did put a normal amount of fuel into the car. So it's all to play for here at Magny-Cours. Montoya leading, Michael Schumacher in 2nd place, Rubens Barrichello holding on in 3rd place. David Coulthard, after that stop-and-go penalty, is 4th, Ralf Schumacher 5th, Jarno Trulli still 6th, where he's been pretty much throughout the entire afternoon. And it's been a while now, 4 races since Jordan have scored any points. And they'll be very happy if Jarno Trulli can come in 6th place. Eddie Irvine going fantastically well today in 7th place, made his way up from 12th. A real tigerish day for the Jaguar driver. A little lock-up there, though, Martin, from Montoya.
Yeah, it's all right into that corner. Often your front right is doing virtually nothing in there, so it might as well be stationary for a split second or two. It's not going to do you any harm. It's when the back starts sliding in there. So Montoya then over the line in a 1:16.5. That's a good lap time at this stage of the Grand Prix, and he's 3.66 seconds ahead, and we're sure though that he's got to stop again. Can Michael reel him in in these next few laps before Montoya stops. But as you said, Jarno Trulli, 6th place man. He's the next target of the flying Eddie Irvine, who's 16 seconds down the road. So Irvine then with a sniff of a World Championship point yet again for the Jaguar team.
Yes, already had a podium, of course, in the Monaco Grand Prix, Eddie Irvine, but looking for some more points here this afternoon. So Montoya going to make a stop in the not too distant future. He's leading by 3.6 seconds from Michael Schumacher. Then it's Barrichello 3rd, Coulthard 4th, Ralf Schumacher 5th, Jarno Trulli still 6th. And the final parts of this race, as we work on lap 47 out of 71, still to look forward to. Lap 49 of the French Grand Prix. This is Michael Schumacher just saying thank you very much. Is he, Martin? Not quite sure. Maybe about time too. One or the other.
No, I think he was saying, look, why did you go right to the apex before you let me come through? And I don't think that was a kind, particularly happy gesture there from Michael Schumacher, who, of course, is 2nd place at the moment, still about 4.5 seconds behind Michael Schumacher, as Alesi has a reasonable pit stop. But Schumacher, I think, will feel comfortable. We're all pretty sure that Montoya has to pit again, and I'm sure Ferrari will have the same information, and they will have also timed the amount of fuel going in to that Williams. And is that Frentzen? He's having a miserable afternoon. Frentzen spinning in the final corner, and once again with traction control. That's a bit confusing how that can happen.
Absolutely. We've seen a few high-profile spins this weekend. Here it comes. Round and round he goes. John Alesi had an extraordinary spin yesterday out at the Grand Courbe, and Frentzen getting himself turned around. We understand the Williams crew now are out, ready to receive Juan Montoya. And the $10 million question here, Martin, is where is he going to rejoin? As Luciano Berti makes his stop, where will Montoya return from his pit stop? Will he drop down below 3rd or 4th place? That's Michael Schumacher.
I think he'll come back in. Yes, he's going to come back in very, very close to Coulthard, who also has got to stop again yet. But the big news is, how much fuel has Barrichello got in the car, really? That's the story at the moment. Can Barrichello run to the end? He's been out of phase with the rest of them through the afternoon with his 2 early stops so far. Does he have enough fuel? Because if he does, we're looking at a Ferrari 1-2 here.
Well, Rubens Barrichello's had a bit of a tough time in the last few races, ever since being asked to move over, make room for his team leader, Michael Schumacher, in the Austrian Grand Prix. His head's gone down a little bit. Here's Juan Montoya, race leader, though, on lap 51, making his stop. Everything fairly routine for the moment. little bit of hesitation there, front jack man. Montoya right on the rev limiter and launches it down the pit lane. Where's he going to rejoin, though? That's the question. Is Coulthard going to come into play? Is Ralf Schumacher going to come into play? Because don't forget that Ralf Schumacher and Montoya were right together on the racetrack before we got into the pit stop sequences.
And Coulthard, I believe I saw Coulthard go through from a long shot. Minardi and a McLaren look quite similar on the colour schemes, but I believe, yes, there is Coulthard is ahead. And so that's, yeah, Coulthard then ahead, and Ralf Schumacher is fifth. Where did Montoya come out? We think fifth, James.
I think between Coulthard and Ralf Schumacher, because Ralf Schumacher's 4.1 seconds behind Coulthard on the racetrack. Haven't seen a wide shot yet that would tell us that, as Michael Schumacher just pulls another one of those tear-off strips off his visor. Little plastic film that they put on top of the visor just allows them to clear off the oil and the dirt that collects. They have 4 or 5 of them at the beginning of the race and work their way through them, just ripping them off just to make sure they've always got clear vision. Michael Schumacher got 21 laps to go. He wants to be able to see as clearly as he possibly can. And he's leading Rubens Barrichello by 9 seconds. And Montoya, just waiting to see exactly where Montoya rejoined. Coulthard, of course, still has to stop again. Ralf Schumacher has gone strongly. There's McLaren getting ready to presumably to receive, well, definitely to receive David Coulthard. Mika Häkkinen, of course, being out of the race.
Yes, indeed. Coulthard is in pit lane. Last time around, he was speeding in the pit lane. I'm assuming it's on the entry there, because there is a point where they have to hit the button. I can't understand how otherwise it could have been. He could have been caught for speeding, unless he just released the button a little bit too early at the end, or the software did not maintain the speed that it needs, but I suspect it would have been on the way in. And then Coulthard joining right behind Irvine, and Irvine is yet to stop again, but that's certainly Coulthard needs to clear quite quickly that Jaguar, unless otherwise he's going to be heavily compromised. I think Coulthard will be having a big stab up the inside here, and Irvine then going way too deep on the brakes. So
I think it's De La Rosa, actually. I think it's Pedro De La Rosa in 19th place, because Eddie Irvine must be right at the other side of the racetrack from him. I think that might well be Pedro De La Rosa, still tooling around in 19th place. He had a little problem on the parade lap. We thought he'd gone out of the race, but he has still been going out there. So he moved out of the way anyway, saw the blue flags, which if it was Eddie Irvine would be very unlikely to have done that, because he's on the same lap as David Coulthard. So, Michael Schumacher leading after 52 laps from Rubens Barrichello in second place. 7.8 seconds the margin there. Ralf Schumacher in third place, 9.9 seconds behind, and not really on the same pace as Rubens Barrichello, who's certainly the fastest man on the racetrack at the moment. Of course, he will not be probably allowed to have a go at his team leader, Michael Schumacher. And Montoya pulling off the racetrack. Yet another retirement for the Colombian. Looks like some smoke coming out of the back of that BMW engine.
What a shame then. Montoya had regained fourth position. Barrichello's up there in second, followed by Ralf Schumacher. Then it was this man, Montoya, followed by Coulthard, but clearly some kind of engine drama, we would imagine. And we saw a little bit of blue smoke, but nothing at the moment.
No, the smoke seems to have stopped. I saw a flick of flame just underneath, so it probably isn't engine related, but when Montoya made that stop there, so we don't know what's put Montoya out of the race, but that's changed the complexion of it slightly. It's good news for David Coulthard, who was in 5th place behind him and is now promoted up to 4th place. That'll give him an extra World Championship point, but he really needs Michael Schumacher to have some sort of misfortune if he's really to capitalise here this afternoon.
According to information I'm getting up from the pit lane, we're saying the big question is, has Barrichello got to stop again? From the pit lane, we're hearing he has got to stop. So maybe that second place of his is still under pressure at the moment. So, as you said, good news for Coulthard and good news for Ralf Schumacher too, if that is the case.
Yes, Ralf Schumacher will move up into second place. He's only 11 seconds behind Rubens Barrichello, but David Coulthard responding as Juan Montoya waves to the crowd. Very disappointed, I would imagine. He's led this race twice this afternoon. He's had a good weekend. Once again, acquitted himself very well indeed, Juan Montoya. Worked methodically with his team. Had some warnings from the Williams team not to be too aggressive. Got himself into fights with Jacques Villeneuve and various other people. They've said, take it easy, Juan. And since then, he's been very mature last 2 Grand Prix.
No doubt about it. Solid drives from Montoya. Coulthard then getting a sniff of yet another podium this year. He's heard about Montoya, he's seen the Montoya incident, and he will also be getting information about Barrichello's situation. And Coulthard with a new lap record of a 1:16.008, and the Ferrari mechanics underneath here are ready for, we are sure, Barrichello for what will be his third stop of the afternoon. How is it going to shake out? It's going to be very close between Barrichello, Ralf Schumacher, and a little bit further down the road, though, David Coulthard.
It takes 21 seconds to make a pit stop, to come in and get back out again. Here is Rubens Barrichello. He was, well, he's probably going to be passed by Ralf Schumacher, but can he get out in front of David Coulthard? That's the big question. A fantastic stop by the Ferrari mechanics, 7.7 seconds. Lots of action and life, as you can see in the pit lane. Where is David Coulthard? As Juan Montoya watches Barrichello rejoining, where is David Coulthard?
It's a great TV shot, isn't it? One driver walking back to the pits as one of his main rivals streams out alongside him back onto the racetrack to complete the afternoon, and that's the 8th non-finish of the season for Montoya, and Barrichello does indeed keep third place, it would seem, at the moment, according to your screen. I think we saw Coulthard behind him.
Yeah, I think that's David Coulthard. There he is in the back of the picture. So Barrichello and Ferrari have gone very well indeed this afternoon. If you think about it, Martin, they qualified in 8th place with this car, and he's now 3rd. Coulthard qualified 4th and is now 4th.
Yes, but of course Coulthard with the stop-and-go penalty pretty much ruined his afternoon. But no doubt about it, Barrichello has made his 3-stopper work. He's made it work well. He used the light load at the beginning of the race, gained some places, charged when he had to charge, and making the best of Coulthard's misfortune. So where then is Ralf Schumacher going to be in all of this?
Well, we believe he's about 16 seconds behind his brother, who leads this race. Michael Schumacher then 16 seconds ahead of Ralf, with Barrichello in 3rd place, and this man will be kicking himself later this evening. David Coulthard will be kicking himself later this evening because, of course, he was right with Ralf Schumacher, in fact, challenging him for position. As Eddie Irvine there, looks like a fair bit of hubble-bubble, toil and trouble coming out of his airbox. The marshal pointing to him. Irvine looking like he wanted to continue there, but that car is going nowhere fast.
Irvine will just be reporting back to the pits to tell them what happened and how it happened. So great afternoon for Eddie Irvine, though. Great drive there, and really pushing hard. And now you see the beginning of those engine problems as the pistons are meeting up with the valves, and all of the other bits and pieces start getting mixed in. The oil and water comes together, and then you see coming up through the trumpets and the airbox will be some flame as well for good measure, and that is the end of a very expensive engine.
Still never seen a blow-up quite as spectacular as the one you had there on the start line at Silverstone, with that Peugeot in the back of your McLaren, where the whole thing literally grenaded itself to bits.
Yeah, nearly barbecued everybody behind me, but no such problem there for anybody behind Eddie Irvine. But Barrichello has David Coulthard behind him. The gap 2.2 seconds last time around, and does Coulthard ever need those critical points? The World Championship is not looking strong this afternoon. Michael Schumacher sitting on 10 precious World Championship points at the moment, and Coulthard just on 3 at this time, so it's looking difficult, James.
Yes, it would be a 32-point margin if it were to end this way. Coulthard needs every point he can get. He'll be desperate to get himself up into, well, 3rd place ideally. 2nd place might be possible as well. There's 15 laps to go in this motor race. You're looking at the 2nd place man, Ralf Schumacher, who turned 26 yesterday, started this race on pole position, hoping for a victory. At the moment, a victory seems unlikely. I think the story from him, when we speak to him after the race, will be that the tyres just let him down slightly at the end. And Louise Goodman is with his teammate Juan Montoya.
Well, Juan Montoya, bad luck. We saw a little puff of smoke out of the back of the car there. Was it an engine problem?
Yeah, it was a bit of an engine problem. A bit disappointed, but that's racing. I'm pretty pleased with the performance of the car in the race, because we did a big sacrifice yesterday in qualifying, going with the harder tire. I thought we could have had a shot of a pole if we would have been on the sub one, but we thought it was better for the race. I was running 2nd again, and it happened.
Well done.
Thanks.
Yeah, that shows a lot of confidence, James, doesn't it? When you choose a harder tyre, you know you're going to look slower than your teammate. You know you may compromise yourself in qualifying generally, and you need a lot of confidence to say, OK, I'll take that because I believe that is the right way to go.
Well, I don't think Juan Montoya has ever lacked confidence. Certainly one of the most self-confident swaggerers I've ever met in Formula One. And Michael Schumacher leading this race. There's Coulthard. Monstering Rubens Barrichello, though. Barrichello must have run wide in that hairpin. We came quite late to that shot, Martin, but this is David Coulthard crawling all over the back now of Rubens Barrichello, and this is for a final podium position.
Yes, indeed. Coulthard's been about 3/4 of a second a lap faster than Barrichello through these previous few turns. He's also made up a lot of time. You saw Barrichello out-braking himself into the hairpin, and we know that Coulthard has a lot of confidence when it comes to passing Barrichello in the Ferrari. We've seen him do it several times, not least in Melbourne earlier this year. And last year here, Coulthard was trying to pass Ferraris every which way, but will he be able to stay close enough in the dirty air of that long, long Estoril turn 2 corner? But at the moment, he's clearly got a speed advantage over the line then, and it's 0.6 of a second according to the computer. David Coulthard wants yet another podium.
Yes, he's very, very hungry indeed. Of course, casting your mind back 12 months, he did in fact pass Rubens Barrichello here. Off the start line, Barrichello got in front of him, and Coulthard passed him just coming up to the corner now where he did it last year. And of course, it was the same corner, that hairpin, where he later on put that extremely bold move on Michael Schumacher, which got him the lead and ultimately the victory. It was a wonderful performance 12 months ago from David Coulthard, and he's really alive now. He wants every point he can get, and he's right on the gearbox of this Ferrari, which seems to have just dropped off the pace slightly. Rubens Barrichello now circulating 6 or 7/10 of a second slower than he was before, and slower than his main rivals, particularly in the slow corners. That's where he seems to be struggling. David did as well there, from the looks of things.
Yeah, there was a puff of blue smoke out the back of that, but it was the left front was locked up, and then the smoky air going through the Venturi. So Coulthard braking very late into 180 and braking too late in the end, and Barrichello then keeping that margin at the moment.
Yes, without the stop-and-go penalty, of course, Coulthard would have been second. He knows that, we know that, you all know that at home as well. What can he do? 12 laps remaining to put the situation right.
Well, if this was Speedway, you'd say it was team riding now, wouldn't you? And Barrichello then clearly has got a job to do to keep points away from David Coulthard. But he's got his own job to do as well, because if the race finishes like this, Ralf Schumacher passes Barrichello for 3rd place in the World Drivers' Championship. So Barrichello needing those points for himself too right now.
There's an awful lot at stake here this afternoon. We're in the meat of the season, this middle phase of the Formula One Championship, as Coulthard comes very close up behind Rubens Barrichello again. Both of these cars seem to be struggling to get any kind of grip through the slower corners, and it really has been a race that's been eating away at the tyres. What's going to happen in the closing stages? Bridgestone, of course, supplying both of these two drivers. There's Ron Dennis, the boss of the McLaren team. What will he be thinking, do you think, this afternoon? Apart from, Martin, obviously apart from the stop-and-go penalty, Coulthard would clearly have been in 2nd place today. It wasn't really on the pace of Michael Schumacher.
No, I think they've been better than they were last weekend. I think they took a bit of satisfaction from that, but he's going to be thinking one car didn't start the race and the other car with a pit lane speed limit. It's trivial stuff, a lot of it. It's not about, you know, a performance issue is one thing and trivial stuff's another. So not a great day for McLaren, but I think they'll take a bit of heart from improved performance, certainly compared to Nürburgring last weekend.
Yes, they were 8/10 off the pace in qualifying at Nürburgring last Sunday. This weekend, just 2/10 off the pole. It's a big improvement from the McLaren team, for whom qualifying really has been their Achilles heel so far this season. But that gap now seeming to open out a little bit between Barrichello and Coulthard as they go down the back straight.
Yeah, Coulthard is not as fast through that critical turn 2. Look, he's much faster under braking, although you do tend to get the yo-yo effect in there, the piano accordion effect, and as the car in front gets on the power earlier, opens the gap back up again. But Coulthard is much faster under brakes into the Adelaide hairpin. Can he get anywhere near him to have a go?
Well, we've got 11 laps left. Michael Schumacher is 16 seconds ahead of his brother Ralf. Barrichello 3rd, Coulthard 4th. This is the battle. Trulli 5th and Heidfeld in 6th place. A lot more still to come. closing stages then of the French Grand Prix. This is lap 63. Michael Schumacher leading. There he is from Ralf Schumacher. You just saw a quick glimpse of Jenson Button, who is in 12th place, a little bit better for the Englishman than before, but unfortunately for him, still behind his teammate Giancarlo Fisichella. And now the margin 24 seconds between the two of them. So once again, Fisichella has conquered Button. But nobody has conquered this man, Martin. Michael Schumacher, another flawless drive from him, really. And just like the Nürburgring last weekend, you have to say he's taken all the pressure that everybody's thrown at him. Didn't start this race, of course, from pole position. His brother did, but he's managed to get the lead and he's kept it. Yeah, but it's different to last weekend, James. He won last weekend's race by somehow grabbing pole, then controlling the early stages and making sure his brother didn't pass him. He did not have the fastest car last weekend. This weekend he has had the fastest car, and that's why he's winning this race so effortlessly. This will be the half-century up if he gets over the line. This will be his 50th Grand Prix win for Michael Schumacher, and he's making it look extremely easy. Barrichello is, well, Ralf is 15.6 seconds behind him, Barrichello a further 5.6, and Coulthard remains less than 1 second behind Barrichello, holding down 4th place, truly 5th. Heidfeld in the final point-scoring position in 6th. Your retirees are Irvine, broken engine, Montoya, broken engine, and Bernaldi, he just stopped on the side of the track. Villeneuve, electrical problems. Hakkinen did not start the race. Yes, Michael Schumacher, as you say, Martin, if he wins here, that'll be his 50th Grand Prix victory, and it'll set him up, of course, for Silverstone in 2 weeks' time, where he can equal Alain Prost's all-time record of 51 Grand Prix victories. Very appropriate if he did it at Silverstone. But all that lying in the future. Alain Prost, of course, this weekend asked the question inevitably, how do you feel about Michael Schumacher closing in on your record? He said, well, first of all, it's inevitable. He is one of the all-time greats, if not the best driver, and I'm only too happy for him to pick up the mantle and take on the records. I think by the time Schumacher winds up his career, whether it's 2004 when his current Ferrari contract expires or whether he goes on beyond that, fair to expect that he will have wrapped up all of the great records that there are for a Grand Prix driver. This, though, the battle between the final podium position between Rubens Barrichello and David Coulthard, just 9/10 of a second in it, and they've only got 8 laps to go if one of them is going to get onto the podium. So traffic ahead of them, but the problem with the blue flag situation these days is everybody has to leap out of the way at the first opportunity, and we don't really see lead drivers having to really work the traffic these days. It's a skill that we used to have. Now they just literally spring out of the way at the first opportunity, otherwise they get penalised. And it's a shame in many ways, because for me negotiating back markers is a main skill of being a Grand Prix driver. But nonetheless, I guess we see some cleaner and clearer races, some true head-to-heads in other respects. I suppose you'd call that progress, because I remember in the days of you and Senna and Mansell and Piquet and all that, almost every race there was talk about back markers not getting out of the way properly. Blue flags had been waved, hadn't been responded to, and nowadays, as you say, they just jump out of the way like frightened jackrabbits. Yes, indeed, but that's the regulations, and you can't fight them. But I was just thinking, you know, Coulthard's best chance of getting past Barrichello looks like it's going to be in the back markers. He's simply not fast enough in turn 2 to use his braking advantage into turn 3. In the dirty air that the Ferrari has finished with, and passes on in his direction as they, and look, Coulthard, then they've cleared that back marker now. We've just picked that shot up, unfortunately, and it hasn't quite paid off, but that is where he's going to find his way past Rubens Barrichello for that final podium slot, which what would be his 7th podium of the year. David Coulthard, once again, just locking the inside left slightly. Barrichello under pressure. Yes, it's been a year of strong race performances from David Coulthard. 2 victories, as you say, 7 podiums. Qualifying has been the problem for McLaren. They've not been able to get the car working as well as they might when it's light with fuel on qualifying settings. Ferrari have had the edge, and latterly Williams too have had the edge. But Coulthard has gone very strongly indeed in the races, and now once again monstering Rubens Barrichello for position. And you talk about back markers and David Coulthard, of course, one's mind immediately turns back to Monaco, where he had a nightmare time trying to get past Enrique Bernaldi, held up for over 40 laps by the Arrows driver, and certainly didn't do him any favours on that day. Coulthard seemed reluctant to just jump in behind the back markers, behind the leaders, sorry, as they came through, to try and find a way past. Has he got any response then for Ferrari in the 6 laps that remain, David Coulthard? Coulthard 20.8 seconds then off the leader, and as you said earlier on, that is going to be frustrating for David Coulthard. That stop and go penalty cost him significantly more than that,
And, of course, Michael Schumacher not under pressure up front at all, not pushing anywhere near his limits, so it's an unrealistic comparison in many respects, but it just shows you, I think, without that stop and go, what a difference it would have made to Coulthard's afternoon, and certainly would have been a really good battle between Ralf Schumacher and David Coulthard, one of which sadly we were robbed.
Yes, Coulthard would almost certainly have been in second place now, and perhaps even challenging Michael Schumacher as he was 12 months ago, but it wasn't to be from the start. Michael Schumacher got a great start. Mika Häkkinen, of course, didn't even take the start. All fairly close together, Ralf Schumacher, Michael Schumacher, Montoya and Coulthard in the opening stages. Rubens Barrichello very cleverly brought up into play by the Ferrari tacticians. They three-stopped him, ran him light with fuel, and it worked brilliantly. Got Barrichello up from 8th place on the grid into 3rd place on the racetrack. It's been an afternoon of strategy, of tactics. It's been an afternoon of tyre performances. It's been an afternoon of unfortunate penalties for David Coulthard. I have to ask you, Martin, who is your driver of the day? Who's put in the star performance? A difficult one, I would say, to judge. What's your view?
Well, Michael's been cruising, hasn't he, and peerless, I think, this afternoon. I thought Montoya did a very solid job today. Montoya was looking strong, and I admire his courage to go a different way. So for me, Montoya's the driver of the day.
Also worth a mention, probably Rubens Barrichello, for the way that he stuck to Ross Brawn's strategy. And also, let's not forget, in 5th place and 6th place, we've hardly seen him this afternoon, Trulli and Heidfeld. Trulli, of course, in the Jordan, looking for his first points for 4 races, and Heidfeld, who is currently in front of both BAR and Jordan drivers in the World Championship, which is a great achievement for a Sauber driver. There's Michael Schumacher with just 4 laps to go, Martin.
And he's been told on his pit board to drop the revs. In other words, shift gears earlier. Don't look for the little red light to tell you to change gear. Not 400 or 500 RPM off the gear shift points, maybe even 1,000, and that's a huge difference. You know, the mechanical energy going through those engines at best part of 18,000 RPM. Just change gear 1,000 revs earlier, and you take a lot less effort from the engine to do that. But Michael then pretty much easy going for him at the front. And is this another opportunity for David Coulthard to have a stab to get closer to Barrichello? And yes, indeed it is. Barrichello went wide too. We've seen this a few times, haven't we? Coulthard drag racing out of Adelaide hairpin. That time around, it could not work. Barrichello having the wider line, able to get on the power slightly earlier. And, well, Coulthard there with just a sniff of that podium, but it wasn't enough, was it?
Absolutely fantastic little bit of action at the end of this Grand Prix. They're going to be squabbling over the final podium position right the way through to the flag. It's going to be a real grandstand finish between these two, both of them struggling clearly to get a lap time out of these very worn and very tired old Bridgestone tyres. And Rubens Barrichello, a slight lapse of concentration, just opened the door there for David Coulthard, and this feisty Scotsman, 30-year-old David Coulthard from Twineholme in Scotland. It's all he needed, just have a bit of a go. Look how close they are. Wonderful shot there as they both get their pit boards, telling them, as if they needed telling, of how close they are on the racetrack to each other. One of the Benettons is just in front of them, and they're going to have to hurdle that one in the 3 laps remaining. And what's the outcome going to be? You can still see the back of that car just sliding around. They're really struggling for grip.
Yeah, they're earning the money out there this afternoon, James. This is a difficult and technical racetrack. The Benetton is in range, but not close enough for a stab under braking for Barrichello to clear it, and so they will have to pick him up maybe down at the 180 corner, somewhere like that, or even towards, let's see, that's Button, of course, he's doing 18.8s. Barrichello and Coulthard doing 17.7s, and the Button clearing out of the way immediately. Does he know that there's 2 cars? Yes, he does know there's 2 cars homing in on him. So Jenson Button taking himself completely out of the equation.
And of course, Ferrari will be on the radio to Rubens Barrichello, impressing upon him, as if he needed telling, the importance of keeping Coulthard behind him. This is the difference between keeping Coulthard over 30 points behind Michael Schumacher or under 30 points behind Michael Schumacher. It sounds like a lot with just 7 races left in this World Championship, and it is a lot. Schumacher feeling pretty comfortable at the top, and Ferrari do not want David Coulthard scoring any more points this afternoon than is absolutely necessary. Schumacher just a couple of laps away now from that tantalising 50th Grand Prix victory. Looking down the field, Ralf Schumacher, of course, still second. Barrichello and Coulthard we're seeing here, 3rd and 4th. Jarno Trulli, we've not really mentioned him much, but he's 5th, and Heidfeld is 6th. in the Sauber. Kimi Räikkönen, another strong afternoon for him in the second of the two Saubers. He's running in 7th place. Heinz-Harald Frentzen has had all kinds of attentions from all kinds of people, many battles this afternoon, but it's not netted him anything really. He's down in 8th place. Olivier Panis is 9th, and Luciano Berti outperforming his teammate, the very experienced Jean Alesi. Luciano Berti is in 10th place with the two Benettons behind him of Fisichella and Button.
These two men then stopped 3 times this afternoon, 3 times scheduled stops for Barrichello for fuel and tyres. Coulthard one very unscheduled one for the extra. And Button then off the racetrack. Jenson Button appears to have spun out of the race. I think that's just residual smoke out of the engines there from the fact it's been switched off while it was in doing an awful lot of hard work. So final lap then, Michael Schumacher is on his final tour. I don't see anywhere now that Coulthard's going to have an opportunity to take that 3rd place. And we pick up then leader Michael Schumacher.
Yes, he's had a sensational season so far, 5 victories. He's averaging almost 7 points a race. And last year when he won the World Championship, he was averaging 6. So he's already well ahead of his own averages. He's breaking records left, right and centre. This is for his 50th career victory. And Michael Schumacher, where will it all end from him? A wonderful drive, managed to contain the threat from the BMW Williams team, managed to contain the threat also from McLaren, although of course we will wonder forever what would have happened if Coulthard hadn't had that stop-and-go penalty. Perhaps we would have had a repeat of the battle through Château d'Eau for the last time. Down towards the chicane comes Michael Schumacher. It's been a very familiar sight throughout the 2001 Grand Prix season. He's won 10 of the last 14. Michael Schumacher wins the French Grand Prix for Ferrari. Vive la différence. Well done, Michael. His team boss, Jean Todt, of course, will be very pleased. And here's the battle for the final podium place between Rubens Barrichello and David Coulthard. Ralf Schumacher has crossed the line in 2nd place. Barrichello gets 3rd. Coulthard gets 4th. We're waiting then for Jarno Trulli to come through in 5th place. And a great day for Ferrari's team boss, the Frenchman Jean Todt, the man who's done so much, really, to turn this team around. And he announced this weekend, incidentally, that he plans to retire at the end of 2004. And no one will criticise him for the amount of success that he's brought to Ferrari over the years. A great day for the men in red, Martin.
Yes, indeed. And Trulli then will go over the line. He's some 47 seconds behind Coulthard. Goes over the line for 2 World Championship points. And I think Eddie Jordan will be mighty relieved to score some more points in the Jordan team. They've had a rough run recently. Good news for Jordan then. Heidfeld taking another point for the Sauber team. So Ralf then up into 3rd place in the World Championship. We said, didn't we, earlier on in the programme that you can't discount Ralf Schumacher at the moment. Michael pulling away into the lead, but Ralf coming on very, very strong in the second half of the season.
Yes, indeed he is. Ralf Schumacher now on 31 World Championship points, just jumping ahead of Rubens Barrichello. There is Jean Todt. Well, there'll certainly be a lot of talk about him tomorrow in the French newspapers. Very, very happy man indeed. Presided over by far the most successful period in the history of the Ferrari Formula One team since he joined, coincidentally, the team back in 1993 at this very Grand Prix. This was his first appearance in the red with the prancing horse on his shirt. And here in Magny-Cours, look how happy he is. You don't see Jean Todt smiling very often, but he's smiling today, getting the congratulations of everybody in his team. So Michael Schumacher then, 78 World Championship points. As the smoke settles over Magny-Cours, a few donuts being turned, I think, by some drivers celebrating. But yes, Jean Alesi giving it the characteristic little bit of Daniel Valentino Rossi, the motorcycle racer, does something a bit similar to that whenever he wins. Alesi, of course, far from being a winner, down in 12th place, but he doesn't care. As he said earlier in the programme, he doesn't mind what the results are as long as he gives his emotions, and that's what he's doing here this afternoon.
The one that confuses me, James, is Della Rosa, who finished 14th. Remember, we saw him parked up on the green flag lap, parked on the side of the road, apparently out of the race. He finished the race in the end. I don't know how he got going again. Just 2 laps down, albeit last but 1.
There's confirmation of the result. You can see, in fact, pretty close at the end between Barrichello and Coulthard, but no way through for the Scotsman. And that means, I'm afraid, for David Coulthard that he's now 31 points behind Michael Schumacher, and that's a pretty tall order, isn't it, Martin, with just 7 races remaining in the World Championship?
It's very tall. It's not impossible. Of course, there's 70 points max available, but he needs Hakkinen up there helping him. He doesn't need the Williams team up there taking points away, and at the moment he could be using Williams to take points away from Ferrari if he had a faster car, if he was having a better run, but it's the other way around. Michael's able to not only beat the McLaren, he's able to put the Williams between him and those 2 silver cars as well, so Michael looking seriously strong.
Yes, the British Grand Prix in 2 weeks' time, of course. Coulthard was won 2 on the row. He's going to need to win 3 in a row if he's going to get back on terms with this man, Michael Schumacher. And just look at the joy. Never, ever backward in coming forward to show his pleasure at a race victory, Michael Schumacher. I remember when he first came into the sport, he would bounce up and down whenever he got on the podium, and he's continued that sheer exuberance and joy right the way through his career. The 2 brothers there congratulating each other. Ralf Schumacher, well, he managed to get 2nd place. He salvaged 2nd place from what was a very difficult afternoon for BMW Williams. It was all about the tyres really here this afternoon. It was about managing them. It was about managing the race strategy. It was about driving the car to the maximum of what it would do at any time during the Grand Prix. And the Ferrari mechanics just celebrating with their 2 drivers as well. Rubens Barrichello looks quite pleased with himself, and you can't blame him because, of course, he did finish 3rd when he started 8th on the grid. And the technical director of Ferrari, Ross Brawn, is talking with Louise Goodman.
He is indeed, James. Well done, Ross. Would you describe that as a classic tactical Ferrari victory?
It was pretty good. I mean, the first stint, you never know where you are. And when Ralph came in when he did, again like Nürburgring, we knew we had a chance. And we went for a short middle stint to see if we could jump him. And we knew they perhaps only had 1 better set of tyres, which was the first set. So it worked out perfectly. Michael did his normal great job. So and Rubens did a fantastic job as well today. I mean, for a very difficult day yesterday, really he drove a perfect race today.
Thanks, Ross.